A friend of mine who's an actor and a very successful actor said that a change for him happened when he stopped asking his art to pay for his life. Where he had something on the side and he stopped depending on, he said it just took all the pressure off him. It took all the pressure off his creative work and that helped him. For some people, I think it's probably the opposite. It's when they do kind of depend on it, maybe it gives them the impetus to double down. I don't know, but it's just an interesting idea that like when art and money intersect, it complicates it. I don't know how you feel about that.
I feel like that could be a whole nother episode. But let's talk about that. I think that's brilliant. I found that to be the case for myself. This woman just put it so brilliantly. She's in computer, she's in the tech world. She basically said, people don't realize in the tech world where everyone's trying to create the next Facebook or the next Uber, all those people who are working tirelessly to launch that business, their income is coming from a different thing. Their income is coming from something that's not sexy, no one knows, and probably anonymous. But their heart and their passion is developing the next Facebook and Uber. What she said, and it hit me right between the eyes because I was like, this is exactly what actors need to know. She basically said, Silicon Valley had no problem making a distinction between income and, I forget what the word she used, but let's just use your passion. They make a distinction between your income and your passion. If you can separate those two, that's your superpower. They are unstoppable because they had no problem working on their Facebook when their income was coming from a crappy job that made them a lot of money, but they didn't care about. They didn't have any conflicted feelings about that, right? And guess what? Actors, we have trouble separating income and our passion. It's a big surprise that actors feel a lot more than Silicon Valley, right? But the point is if we could control that, if we could make our money completely separate from our passion and have no problem with that, we would be unstoppable. Our 9-to-5 job that makes us money and gets us comfortable every month, we can make that. We feel no shame about it, and we can devote all our time and our heart to our passion. If we were able to do that, if we were able to conquer that, we'd be unstoppable.
There's a couple of things that play into that. I think one of them is self-esteem. A lot of actors feel like if I'm not making my living from acting, I'm not an actor, The other practical consideration is time and the amount of energy you have. So depending on the job you work, you need it to be flexible. If it's a part-time job or a survival job, you need it to be flexible because you need to be able to drop it and pick it up as needs be to take jobs, to do auditions. And I've been on both sides of it. I currently don't have another job. You know what I mean? Like I'm currently just making my living from acting. But I don't know what the future holds. For me, that's the kind of the mental battle of not letting fear creep into what I do creatively. It's a tightrope. It's a tightrope to walk because not knowing where your next paycheck is coming from is tricky.
Right. Wait, I just want to be clear with what I'm saying. I'm just saying to emotionally try to remove ourselves from the stigma or the shame of needing a side job. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
No, I agree with that. And the stigma and the shame, but that's a big thing for a lot of actors. And I think it can be reinforced by how people react when you say you're an actor, especially if they see you in a work environment, if it's at a side job. Like when I was bartending, I would try not to tell people I was an actor. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to invite the conversation. If it came up, of course, I would talk about it, but I would never lead with it. You know what I mean? I would never be like, well, I'm actually an actor, because to me, that seemed like that was rooted in low self-esteem. I know I'm doing this, but I'm actually something else. You know what I mean? Like,
touched on something that's really, really interesting. I think you're a perfect example because you have such a strong mindset. You didn't just move out to LA or just act 5 months ago. You and me are both in the privileged position of being in the game for a bit. We've seen the highs and the lows. We survived. We've had side jobs. We have dead-end jobs. So as positive and as and optimistic as you are, you admit that it's actually difficult to make that emotional disconnection between your income and your passion.
I don't know. For me, it was kind of, it changed over time. And, you know, like the work that I put into mindset and stuff is now, it's starting to pay dividends now. But for a long time, I was insecure about a lot of things. I was insecure about the fact that I never went to, you know, a full-time drama school. I started to work and did classes at night, and I was also in college. So I felt the kind of shame of that for a while. There's a lot of things that were so unnecessary and were kind of a hindrance to my progress, but I had to kind of figure that out along the way. So
I completely agree. I was very similar, to be honest. So you say you figured it out. In what way? Like, was there anything concrete that you kind of worked through?
when I say I figured it out, I don't think I completely figured it out, but I certainly found a way to be more at peace with it. And I think how I got there personally was I started to do this kind of mindset work every day. And instead of seeing the lack of something, I started to just feel the sort of the joy of it, or the abundance of, without getting, without trying to sound too wanky about it. You know what I mean? Like, I focused on the joy of it. I also was doing more of it. I was also in class more. I was also practicing more. I was more immersed in it. What happened then, a funny thing happened then, the acting work started to really kind of interfere with the job that I had been doing in a very real way. But what happened when I started to do the mindset work was the acting work I started to get would take me away from the job for longer. It was harder and harder for me to hold on to that. So then it became a sort of a leap of faith thing where I had to go, okay, well, if I can't keep this job, I have to let this job go. And if I have to let this job go, okay, then I'm just taking whatever comes next.
That's kind of like what I was getting at. I mean, this isn't going that far back, because obviously this is the time that we've known each other, and then also the work that at the studio when we met at Leslie Kahn. So this is actually fairly recent to make that shift. Sure. You're putting in the work. I don't want to gloss over that, because I think that's kind of like, this is really great for me to hear. This is possibly what a lot of other people are trying to figure out for themselves. It just so happens that we're going to holidays. It just so happens that it can be a very dreary time for a lot of actors. This is what most of us have experienced. Do you thrive on it? Does it destroy you? Where's your self-esteem fall? And then hopefully after years of grinding and putting in work, can we actually get in control of it? I don't know if this was ever going to pop up, but it just happened to be I was at my family's house, and I had flashbacks of me growing up. It was easier dealing with my family when I was across the country. I'm not going to lie. But I remember years back, really early on in the game, my sister said to me, and I told you, my dad came around, right? Because he really wanted me to go to math grad school. My sister literally said to me, she goes, "Hey, I think Dad's kind of embarrassed to tell people you're an actor." Cool. Not even joking around. Here's the thing. My sister was watching out for me. And I think she wanted to watch out for me and protect me, but also let me know. This is the brilliance of being incredibly stubborn or just completely oblivious. It had very little effect on me. I had blinders. It didn't matter. I was working at Urban Outfitters. I don't even know where I was working. I was able to make that emotional disconnect between income and passion. And whether it was dumb luck or I was just stupid, I was able to have those blinders on and get through to the years where we could grow up and mature and be in a little more control of our mindset and be a little more positive.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think a friend of ours, someone you know, so put it beautifully, when he talked about waiting for the job to come save him, like waiting for that big role, that series regular role to change his life completely. He would, a car would come pick him up. He'd move a few blocks away to where the big houses were, and his life would be totally different. And when he stopped looking for that, like looking for the job to rescue him, and started to look at more what he could contribute to, the lives of the people around him, the lives of his family. How could he be of service? Things completely changed for him. And I think that's what it is. Who was I talking to? No, I was listening to an interview of one of the Daily Show hosts, and she was talking about Desi Lydic, and she talked about how she was always lived her life by like, I can't go on vacation because I have to wait and see, the job might need me. And then she got pregnant. She had auditioned for the Daily Show, and then I think she'd auditioned a few times, but then she got pregnant, and she was like, you know what, fuck it, whatever. You know what I mean? This is just how it's going to be. And if they need me, they need me. And they called her, and she got the job, and she's like, flew to New York, and she talked to one of the producers, and she's like, just so you know, I'm pregnant. The producer's like, yep, cool, whatever, but it was when she let go of like, because I used to do that. I did that for years. We were talking about a lot of Irish students go on what's called a J1 visa to America when they're in college. It's like a student visa. They go over and get jobs and, act, basically drink their faces off and have a great time for 3 months. And I didn't do it because I had started acting, and I was worried that like, well, I can't leave because of the job. I think when you start living your life and going, you know what, I'm going to live my life anyway, I think it just shifts something where it's like, yeah, live your life. Don't put your life on hold waiting for something to happen. I think waiting is the worst possible place you can be. The worst possible state I can be in is waiting for something, whatever it is, waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to not happen. It's such a powerless place to be. And I think when you take yourself out of that and take back a little bit of agency back and go, no, I'm just going to live my life, it just balances everything a little bit better.
I love that. Just one thing, because I just realized this. So for those tracking, because my mind is blown from this conversation, because I realized that me and a lot of the stories that we're talking about are on polar sides of this. Me having those blinders on for so many years helped me in so many ways, but I realized having those blinders on was the reason I was sitting around waiting for so many years. So for all those years, okay, I realized, because that ties into a little bit about, a handful of episodes back, we talk about, we had a few moments in our lives that were life-changing, and I decided to create more stuff and get on YouTube and all that stuff. I realized I had blinders on for years, and that's what was stopping me from creating stuff and putting it on YouTube and doing all that thing, because I was so keyed in on, this is how I look at life. This is what I need. This is what I believe. And I was so resistant to the forces in the outside around me that it was protecting me emotionally. But I realized I was missing a lot of things. And so to put it on perspectives, like, I needed to open up more. Some people can protect themselves a little bit more, but either way, there's a spectrum here. And I think that's what I learned after, recently from these conversations.
That's really interesting. There's a phrase, and you'll hear sometimes in recovery, where people say, I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. And when I was early on in sobriety or whatever, they used to drive me crazy, because I was like, what? You obviously just don't have big dreams, pal, because I've got these big dreams. But I kind of understand it now, because like when I zoom out and I look at my life, I go, I know I actually am living, like, I get to be an actor. I get to be an actor in LA. I get to do what I love. I get to do it for money. I get to work with all these cool people. I've had all these experiences in my life as a result of it. It's brought me all around the place. I've traveled a lot. My dreams never look like how I think they will. And I think that's what it is. It's like beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't have imagined the life that I have today. And I think that fuels the kind of, the transition away from feeling like the part-time job is dragging you down, and, feeling shame about that. Like, you have to. And there's another thing I've noticed, is where people talk about, broke actors working in a bar, whatever. I'm like, the tenacity that takes to work, to put all of this time and money and effort into getting better at this thing, while also holding down a part-time job, or sometimes a full-time job that involves long hours and shift work and trying to juggle things. A lot of people have families and kids, and there are all these considerations that go into this thing. So it's so disingenuous to talk about, that kind of idea of like actors being sort of losers, the broke actor all waiting to make it. What have I seen you? And that kind of shit where you're like, you don't understand what kind of tenacity and what kind of heart it takes to just stay in it.
Hey friends, if you like that clip, click here to watch the full episode in its entirety. Come on. You know you want to.